Open an official history book on the July 1944 Bretton Woods Conference, and you get a comforting story of international cooperation. The International Monetary Fund and its sister organization, the World Bank, appear as capitalist engines. Their stated purpose is to rebuild a war-torn world and elevate impoverished nations through sound monetary policy. But we can look at the institutional mechanics through a forensic lens, as explored in the book The Creature from Jekyll Island, and a darker geopolitical reality emerges. The architects of this global system held private convictions that stood in opposition to the free market. One of the intellectual guiding lights at Bretton Woods was Harry Dexter White, the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. White was simultaneously operating as a member of a communist espionage ring. Alongside him sat the English economist John Maynard Keynes, a prominent leader within the Fabian Society. Communists and Fabian Socialists disagreed on methodology. While communists favored swift, violent revolution, Fabians advocated for patient gradualism through quiet legislation and propaganda. The Fabians avoided the word socialism to prevent massive public resistance. They instead pushed for macro policies that allowed governments to expropriate wealth through unpayable debt and inflation. Their strategy is revealed in a piece of artwork at the Beatrice Webb House in England. A stained glass window depicts early leaders Sidney Webb and George Bernard Shaw striking the earth with blacksmith hammers, remolding the globe. Positioned directly above the globe is the Fabian crest, which depicts a wolf in sheep's clothing. Recognizing this institutional camouflage is necessary to understand the trajectory of modern international finance. This is the Bookish Breakdown. Subscribe and join us as we follow this trail to its conclusion. The institutional design of the IMF and World Bank facilitates a transfer of wealth away from industrialized nations. Keynes and White shared a dislike for the gold exchange standard, specifically because it disciplined governments and prevented them from manipulating their currencies. Their plan involved replacing it with a politically manipulated paper standard. The long-term vision was to establish a world central bank capable of issuing a global fiat currency, allowing international bodies to manufacture money and tax global citizens through inflation. This diagram illustrates a step toward that goal, the 1970 creation of special drawing rights, or SDRs. This bookkeeping mechanism manufactures money for third world regimes. The World Bank siphoned capital away from private Western investments to deliver it directly to foreign politicians. By delivering billions of dollars to bureaucrats rather than private enterprises, these loans expand government control and suffocate the free market from the start. The recurring cycles of corruption and poverty in the developing world align with the internal logic of these institutions. Tanzanian dictator Julius Nyerere received more World Bank aid per capita than any other nation, utilizing it for a villagization program where the army burned huts and drove peasants into government compounds. In Ethiopia, the Marxist regime of Mengistu Haile Mariam used hundreds of millions in global funding to implement forced resettlement programs. These funded programs utilized famine as a weapon of state control against independent populations. Dictators in Uganda, Zimbabwe, and Vietnam have all received billions in loans while torturing and displacing their own people, all subsidized by Western taxpayers. By addicting these nations to international cash flows, the system's architects conquer foreign countries with money instead of arms, transforming them into compliant cogs within a global political structure. The unpayable debt generated by these international loans forces developing nations into constant bailouts and restructuring. When a regime defaults, the IMF acts as lender of last resort, using freshly printed fiat money to guarantee commercial bank payments. As the weight drops, the financial burden shifts to Western taxpayers, bleeding industrialized nations dry through inflation, causing purchasing power to plummet. These policies drive a forced global economic convergence by exhausting the wealth of industrialized nations. Strong, prosperous nations will never willingly surrender their sovereignty or military to a global authority. Instead, this blueprint is creeping across the map, eroding national independence piece by piece. They bypassed a frontal assault to build a house of world order from the bottom up. As this wealth transfer accelerates, drawing the world to a common economic denominator, The public may eventually be forced to accept a rescue from the World Bank and UN. The foundation for a new global structure is practically complete. How the world's most powerful financiers plan to spring the final trap, deliberately triggering a banking crisis to finalize their feudal design, is a thread we simply cannot leave unraveled. Join us for the next part of our investigation as we uncover the endgame.